Great. So, welcome to FinOps Fridays. My name is Hunter Willis. We have Jonathan Thorpe and Andrew Midgley, also known as Midge, on the line with us today. What I want to do is start with a quick introduction. So, Johnny, you can tell us a little bit about yourself and who you are, and then Midge will go over to you, and then we'll get this conversation started. Thanks for joining us today. Let's dive right into it. John, tell us who you are, what you do, and thanks for joining us today.
And thanks. So I'm Jonathan Thorpe. I've been working in the cloud and with FinOps things for almost a decade. At a large enterprise security company, and then for a provider of call center software. And now I'm doing some consulting work, still in the FinOps space. So had a good time, and I've known Midge for, is it 6, 7 years now?
That's right. I know you guys have
Yeah,
yeah, sorry, Midge. Yeah, I know you guys have worked together for a really long time. It's fun having you both on here. Midge just like came back from having a glass of water, and I jumped right into this. Midge, go ahead and introduce yourself. Sorry, man. Go ahead.
yeah, no worries. So my journey, it probably has a similar length to Jonathan. So for me, got involved in cloud cost management in 2013. At that time, I was working for a large Australian media company called realestate.com.au. Anyone from this region will know them. And yeah, it was one of those situations where controlling costs was really difficult, and there were very few patterns to follow. And we created some good patterns, we created some bad patterns back in the day. It was fantastic. After a couple of years of working in that role, I joined Cloudability. So that's 2015. And ever since 2015, I've actually been working on Cloudability itself. So a range of roles, predominantly in the product space, product marketing, product strategy. So very passionate about the space. I'm very happy to have both you here, and of course, Jonathan, especially. So yes.
And you've both participated in the community and been active. And one of the things that one of the reasons I'm really excited to have you both on this call is that you've both worked in-house and as kind of like consultants in this space, right, in this world, and seen things from, both from that perspective of like being that FinOps person inside the org and also helping out organizations from the outside as an advisor. So I want to start with Jonathan, and we've talked about some of the different instances where you've helped organizations stand up FinOps practices within their organization, kind of get it rolling, and also kind of starting where they might be are still in that walk phase and most of the areas of FinOps that they're working in. And also, before I let him talk, I do want to mention, Midge has done the same thing. While every role he's had while he's been here, he has advised and worked with so many different customers and helped them implement FinOps, oftentimes from start to finish over, a long period of time through different engagements and instances there, and in some cases even working with Jonathan to make that happen. So, John, talk to me about what it's like to try to stand up FinOps in an organization from that beginning. I know that you've got some experience doing it where they're kind of like they've already kind of started on the engineering side, or maybe like that chargeback showback, both from that perspective where chargeback showback already exists, right? So both sides of that kind of fence. Can you talk about the challenges of having to kind of do it all at once when you're standing up FinOps and kind of getting that buy-in for the practice within the organization?
Okay, so bit of context there. I was always sort of at it from the engineering perspective. So, we actually had a platform engineering group, which I was part of. And so essentially, centralize, we manage the cloud platform, and then product teams actually use the managed environment that we had. And also some teams had their own accounts and so on. But it quickly became apparent, especially once you start running down your migration credits, that you want to start using money more effectively. So the platform group that I was in, we established a cost and efficiency forum, which run every couple of weeks. But as they talk about, this is way before the FinOps Foundation, but the core concept of we weren't, even though there was a shared cloud platform, we were not going to just dictate to everybody. So the actual central, well, the bi-weekly meeting that we had both members of the platform engineering team and from each product team, an architect and also somebody in management. And in this meeting, we were basically able to discuss upcoming initiatives, which map to KPIs, and begin to circulate ideas from a central platform team. Everybody put their ideas together and then figure out how we would actually move towards executing on them and measuring them. That was essentially how we started before even any tooling was really in place.
Right. And what did the structure around that look like? Like, how did you go from, hey, we've got ideas, to like, hey, this is what the engineers need to be doing, and then how are we going to communicate that back out to the rest of the organization?
Well, essentially, there was the members of the bi-weekly meeting that were the key to that, because as I said, we had somebody from engineering leadership from each product team and the architect from each product team in the meeting. So once we'd actually had our forum and we began to agree on more or less on what needed to be done, then they would be able to take that information back to their teams and have the discussions about how it was going to be achieved. And then primarily, then I would work with the engineering leadership and the actual architects, because I had a relationship with them from being a solution architect, helping migrate them to the cloud. To actually work out, well, okay, this can't be done, this can be done, and handle communications of it. So, for example, our eyes weren't always as flexible as they were. And we had goals for, if we want to get, say, 70% RI coverage in this region, well, this region's new, maybe 50%. And then you talk to the actual product teams, right? And they're like, well, we think maybe we don't want to commit because, maybe we can re-architect and begin to horizontally scale.
I think there's always been like this conversation about whether commitment management, so reserved instances, savings plans, committed use discounts, depends on which cloud provider you are with. So there's a question mark of, is that a centralized managed thing, or is that something that you can just send out to the teams and get them to do it? And there's been flame wars had over this conversation. Really, at the end of the day, everyone has agreed that it is absolutely a centralized thing. So there needs to be conversations like Jonathan was kind of describing. But at the end of the day, there needs to be someone in your cloud center of excellence or a FinOps person who is going to own that and live that. And so you can never be sure of the future. But if they're looking at this problem every day, if they have goals, maybe it's 80% coverage. Maybe they have a certain goal of utilization. That can be something that they're looking at every day, and making adjustments as needed. So, okay, maybe at the moment I'm at 80% coverage, and our usage over the next few weeks and few months increases. So overall, my coverage by commitments is reducing. I'm keeping an eye on that, and I can make adjustments. I can keep talking to my teams. With savings plans, you actually don't know what discount you're actually going to get, what benefit you're going to get, because they move around between instance types and regions where the discount percentage actually changes. So you actually don't know exactly what you're going to get when you buy them. But in terms of the actual nature of the problem that you described, the fact that if I've got some resources, I don't know from 1 hour to the next whether I might get the discount or whether I might not get the discount, because they do move around. The nature of that really hasn't changed. That is still true and still the case. And so there's multiple ways of trying to solve that. The most simple way that we see solve that is that you would use it like a list cost. So there is, tools like Cloudability and I guess other tools in the market. They'll produce a metric that says, let's remove all of the impacts from any kinds of discounting, including negotiated discounts. And let's just have a pure public cost so that we have that reliability of cost. That's probably the simplest way of dealing with it.
What's your advice to an organization that is just now kind of getting rolling with their commitment program?
If you're just getting started, just start with compute savings plans for AWS. Just start with flexible cards for GCP. For Azure, it can be a little bit more complicated. But anyway, so let's resume on AWS again. Start with compute savings plans. Maybe I'm spending on average, on compute, $100 an hour. Perhaps that's what's happening right now. So maybe start with a commitment of $10 an hour, just for the first month. Well, that's only going to be 10% coverage, but let's just get started. After the first month, you start seeing these savings are real. You can measure them day to day, even hour to hour potentially, and you can just see that exactly what we're saving day to day through the month.
Savings is savings.
Savings is savings. And now when it gets to the second month and you go, okay, well, our coverage is still about 10%. We've still got 90% we can cover. It's kind of real. The confidence starts building. and you can just kind of work from there. That's kind of the approach that I see.
Yeah, and I think part of it as well is just an honest conversation with people that are nervous about, you can poke things a little bit. It was like, well, do you really think you don't want to commit for 1 year? Well, do you think we're going to change cloud providers in 1 year? That's not really going to happen. And, do you think that your product doesn't have a future, for the year? It's like, as soon as you give people the real, it's like, oh no, we're definitely going to be here for a year. We're definitely going to be using this cloud. Oh, and wow, this is really low hanging fruit for saving money. It's like, well, you could either do optimization, utilization and stuff, and that's hard work, or you can buy some RIs, which honestly, it's an easy decision at that point. I think part of it is also the education, right? About, well, okay, in the background, we've committed to using this, so we're not going to move clouds. Your product isn't going away. Just give them that comfort where they're going to say, okay, we'll commit to something. And, they know that the commitment's already been made in other ways. So they're going to be in this environment for that length of time, and they're not going to be wasting money. It's so low risk. And I think as well, that also comes mid for where, break-even points are, right? Yeah. Even if you did nothing else, if you're going to break even with whatever you do in a period of 5 months, then just people can make peace with that.
Great. Like with gamification, there's so many things, small things that you can do to incentivize organizations too, because like with things like pizza parties and little rewards and prizes and shout outs, like those things aren't substitutes for, the financial incentives and like raises and goals for, KPIs and all that kind of stuff. But they're great for, hey, whichever department or whichever team on the cloud operations team, has the highest percentage of correct tags gets pizza or something, like those kinds of small incentives for actual rewards for gamification, even though the visibility itself sometimes is enough. But in some organizations, you need to add a little bit more grease, almost literally, right, to the game. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I would. What I would say, this goes back to the chargeback and showback stuff, because if you're going to be doing gamification like that, you got to make sure your cost allocation is accurate.
Yeah, absolutely.
You don't want to be attaching to somebody's name and have incorrect data.
I was going to ask you a question more generally about gamification for both of you, I guess. What do you see as the most effective strategy with gamification? Because obviously in gamification, there's people that are towards the top and there's people towards the bottom, or teams at the top and bottom. Do you find a carrot or stick to be the most best motivator? Is it like people are, it's like, oh my God, I'm the top team, and that really motivates people, or is it, oh crap, I don't want to be the bottom team?
I think as for individuals, right, they were the people that are doing the work, getting the recognition of the savings made, right?
Yeah.
So it's kind of both, right? So if you're an individual being asked to do the work, then just acknowledgement, is a good thing, sort of. But I guess as you sort of move further up the stack, sometimes it's the oh, I don't want to be towards the bottom.
The most effective thing, ideally, is to find out and do a little bit of research to ask people or team leaders, like what would motivate them, right? Like, is it a culture where, there's too much stick and some carrot might really make a difference? Because I've seen that happen. I've seen organizations where they have like a fun game and it immediately starts to change the culture of the whole company because everybody's been demoralized. And now with this one project or deployment, right, or trying to get people to accomplish this goal, there's been some fun injected to things and nobody knew that this could happen, and the whole culture of the organization starts to change because of a little bit of fun.
And keep in mind, right, we had that cost and efficiency forum, right, which was all of the teams represented, all of the products. So we didn't decide on the rewards, sort of, whatever the gamification was in a vacuum, right? It wasn't like somebody said, hey, finance, how are we going to do this, right? So there was discussion really about that. Sure. But what I would say is I've never met an engineer that's going to turn down an Amazon gift card.
Yeah.
That's a good one.
How about you, Mitch?
I'm actually remembering some pretty fun times back in my last job I was talking about before, where I came up with a system where I judged every team. It was an automated system I came up with that was called Midge's Law. I named it after myself. And it was based on 5. It was shocking. I mean, it was based on 5 attributes.
Awesome.
I'm I'm not sure if people respected it or not, to be honest. I mean, the fact I called it Midge's Law was probably my first mistake. But yeah, it was so long ago, I can't remember if it made a difference, to be honest. But but it was everyone was judged. You know, you can see which teams are doing well, which teams are doing badly. But just, you know, and I think the ultimate KPI, the ultimate measurement in our world is that unit economics one.
Yeah.
You know, that is you talk about the rubber hitting the road. That is where the rubber hits the road. And the best example we have from our team to Cloudability is us processing cloud billing data on behalf of our customers. And so our ultimate metric was how much was it costing us to process 1 billion lines of cost data. That was our metric. What is that costing us? And, you know, because we knew the amount of billing lines that we were processing was going up. So there was every chance that our overall cost would go up. But could we measure efficiency by cost per line we processed? And that made a huge difference for our team. And we were able to become about 80% more efficient from memory by doing that.
And like Netflix, when COVID hit, their cost per user went down. It was costing them 25%. So it went down by 75% cost per user as they scaled up. And the way the words I've used to describe this is it growth or is it bloat? Right. And the only way to measure if you're scaling properly, like as it grows, is your cost per whatever, click per day, cost per user, cost per billion lines of billing data, right? Is that going down as you grow? And that's the awesome part of cloud, right? That scalability, that that ability to get that growth from that unit cost metric.
Yeah.
When you can extract it. What's the word I'm looking for? Scalability is a good word, I guess.
Scale.
John, go ahead. Yeah.
And I think one of the important things is right now that you mentioned unit economics, it means your tagging and other cost allocation methods have to be spot on and granular, because ideally you want to be able to feed in your unit economics and to help drive engineering decisions, right? Because maybe you've got some big system on the background that's to do with billing, for example. It's not the latest greatest. You're not going to completely rewrite it. People don't want to touch it because it's considered legacy. But your unit economics are pointing to like, wow, if we actually direct some engineering resources to this, we could become so much more effective.
And economies of scale.
Exactly.
Economies of scale was the Midge is like pinging that in there. Like, yeah, that's it. That's what I was looking for.
Yeah.
Well, and another side of this too, right? Because not every single application and workload that you have in the cloud is generating a profit or tied to something that's profitable necessarily. And again, working with US public sector, like they don't say savings, they say cost reduction, right?
Yep.
And one of the ways they can prove that they're doing well is by demonstrating cost reduction through unit economics, by saying like, hey, every user we support with this workload is costing us less per user now after we did X, Y, and Z. And for them, their budget's set. They get like an allocated budget for the year. And as long as they stay within that budget, they're fine. So if they can save, they get to do more with that budget, but they're not necessarily incentivized. They're incentivized to be super transparent. So allocation is like a really big deal for them, right? But they're not necessarily super incentivized to do everything they can to save money all over the place, but they can do more if they can save, right? They can do the passion projects and innovation and things like that.
I think that's one of the core FinOps Foundation principles, right? It's not about saving money. It's about you. For every dollar you spend, you're getting maximum value out of it.
That's right.
Exactly.
All right, guys. Well, this has been a fantastic conversation. I think we got into the weeds and bounced around in a couple of different places, but I think it was like really great exploration, both from commitment side as well as chargeback, showback, and how organizations can operate and motivate their employees to, you know, optimize costs and also meet policies to implement taxonomies for chargeback and showback, right? To operate functionally as an organization. And then we just had this great conversation about economies of scale and unit economics. So thank you all both for being here on this. Yeah. Last words, Midge.
I was gonna say every good FinOps conversation should end with unit economics. You know, every podcast you do, Hunter, should end with unit economics. Then you know you've been successful, right?
That's right. That's right. John, did you have anything you wanted to say before we pop off here?
No, I've done that. FinOps has been a great journey, and I've been fortunate enough to, partnered with Mitch to do most of it. So it's been good. Great talking with both of you.
All right, and Midge, one last word of advice or anything you want to say before we sign off?
Oh man, I can't think of one good piece of advice. Maybe the piece of advice is don't listen to me. Listen to Jonathan. He's my advice.
All right. Well, everybody, do catch Midge's session at FinOps X 2024. He is going to be speaking there. And if you're watching this past 2024, after FinOps X 2024, you can go back, try to catch that recording after the fact too. And I really appreciate both of you all on the call today. So thanks for joining us, everybody. Take care. Have a good one, and we'll see you next time.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Bye.